All right, let's talk about something that might have you gripping your armrest just a little bit tighter. The 5 scariest airports in the US. But here's the thing, they are almost definitely not the big, busy ones you're thinking of. Turns out, what makes an airport a real challenge has very little to do with crowds and, well, everything to do with Mother Nature. And it's completely understandable if flying feels a little nerve-wracking lately. We've all seen the headlines about some of these high-profile incidents, tragic collisions, near misses. I mean, it's enough to make even the most seasoned traveler feel a little uneasy. So with all that stuff in the news, it's only natural to wonder, has flying gotten more dangerous? Well, when you actually dig into the data, the answer might really surprise you. Get this. A study from MIT actually put the odds of dying in a plane crash at about 1 in 13.7 million. That just confirms what we've known for a long, long time. Flying is still, by a huge margin, the safest way to travel. Okay, so if the actual act of flying is statistically incredibly safe, then what are we even talking about? What actually defines a scary airport? It's not about how many people are there or how long the security line is. Nope. The real challenges are way more fundamental. It all boils down to the environment. The toughest airports for pilots aren't necessarily the biggest ones. They're the ones that are constantly up against some gnarly geography and totally unpredictable weather. And our first few airports on the list prove this perfectly. Our journey is going to start in the Rocky Mountains, specifically Colorado, which is actually home to not one, not two, but 3 of the most challenging airports in the entire country. First on our list is a place you've definitely heard of, the world-famous ski town of Aspen. It might be a playground for the rich and famous, but for pilots, its airport is notorious for a whole bunch of reasons. Just try to picture this. Pilots have to fly a really steep approach, and they're basically boxed in by high mountains on all sides. Then you add in these notoriously wild winds that just whip through the valleys, plus tons of snow, and you've got a recipe for a white-knuckle landing. It's so demanding, in fact, that flights are only allowed in and out during daylight hours. Staying in Colorado, we're going to hop over to Telluride. This airport holds a very specific and, a very intimidating record. At over 9,000 feet, Telluride is the highest commercial airport in the entire country. And let me tell you, that kind of extreme altitude changes absolutely everything about how a plane performs. See, the air up there is thin. That means there are fewer air molecules for the wings to generate lift and for the engines to burn fuel. So you get less power and less lift, which means you need to go faster for both takeoff and landing. You combine that with some serious mountain turbulence, tricky terrain, and runways that are often covered in ice, and you can see why only the most experienced pilots get to fly here. And for our last stop in Colorado, we have Eagle County Regional Airport, which serves the super popular Vail ski area. And it faces a very familiar set of problems. Yup, it's another airport that's just squeezed into a tight mountain valley. Pilots have to follow these complex, winding approach patterns to get around all the terrain, all while dealing with the exact same heavy winter storms that make the skiing so great in the first place. Okay, we're leaving the high mountains behind. But our next 2 airports prove you don't need altitude to create a crazy challenging environment. Sometimes the danger comes from being surrounded by water or by a whole lot of houses. So now we're heading way, way up north to Sitka, Alaska, where the airport's location is, to put it lightly, pretty dramatic. The airport is built on a tiny island, literally connected to the town by just a narrow strip of land. This leaves it completely exposed to some nasty coastal weather and really strong, unpredictable winds. And with a short runway surrounded by water on 3 sides, there is absolutely zero room for error. For our final airport, we're going from the Alaskan wilderness to sunny Southern California. But right there among the palm trees and suburbs of Orange County is an airport with a really unique and demanding challenge: John Wayne Airport. So the core problem at John Wayne is its runway. We're talking about one of the shortest runways of any major commercial airport in the United States. And this physical limitation forces pilots into a very, very unusual takeoff procedure. A takeoff from John Wayne feels like a rocket launch. Seriously. Pilots use full power for this super rapid, incredibly steep climb to get off the ground as fast as possible. Then, almost as soon as they're in the air, they have to dramatically cut the engine power. And why do they do this? To follow some of the strictest noise rules in the country, because the airport is jammed right in the middle of dense neighborhoods.
For passengers, it can honestly feel like the engines have just failed.
So we've been all over the map. Colorado, Alaska, California. We've seen mountains, islands, crowded suburbs. So what's the common thread here? What ties all these scary airports together?
What's the key takeaway from all of this? When you strip everything else away, what is it that really makes an airport a true test of a pilot's skill? The answer really comes down to these four things. You've got high altitude, which messes with the plane's performance. You've got unpredictable weather that can change in a heartbeat. You've got difficult terrain around you that really limits your options. And you've got physical constraints, like a runway that's just too short. Any one of these can make an airport tricky. You start combining them, and you get one of the most challenging airports in the country.
It's pretty clear that flying into these places requires an incredible amount of skill from the pilots and the whole crew. But it does leave you with one final thought. Is the scariest part of the journey navigating these extreme takeoffs and landings, or is it what's waiting for you when you get where you're going? Something to think about on your next flight. Thanks for tuning in.